Well, hello there, everybody, and a huge welcome to the Value Conversation Part 3. I don't think we ever thought when we did the Value Conversation originally that we would reach a Part 3 very easily, but we have. Parts 1 and 2 have been so very interesting and thought-provoking, I think, for us as both as individuals and also as a profession, that it felt as though there were still things to say about it, hence part 3. But I'm pretty sure this will be the last one. And I'm delighted to be welcoming, as before, Garreth Brooke and Angie and Sharon as well, Sharon Mark-Teggart. So if you're watching this on catch up, a big welcome to you. I would suggest you might want to go and watch parts 1 and 2 as well. And talking about value, there is huge value in setting aside the time to do this. There really is. So before I hand over, what we're going to be having today is we're going to be looking at how to pre-frame yourself as a teacher before lessons even begin. We're going to look at how to make the value more visible and immediate, from the start of lessons rather than having to wait 14 years. And Sharon's going to be sharing with us some starting ideas, really, of how we can use Chat GPT or GTP in our studios. I just wanted to start, though, by highlighting an example of value and what is value from when I was over in Northern Ireland last week. So I went over and joined Sharon, and we had our Curious Live in Belfast, and I stayed at what is a very lovely hotel in this little seaside town of Newcastle, which isn't very far from where Sharon lives. And it's a 5-star hotel. It's very nice indeed. And it's overlooking the sea, and I had a sea view, and that was very lovely. But actually, when it came to sleeping, the bed wasn't really particularly comfortable. It had a huge duvet on it. And in order to get the right temperature, I had to take the duvet out of the duvet cover because there were no blankets, there were no sheets available. And then the bed itself was a zipped up one. It could separate into 2 twins, but, there was no lying in the middle of the bed because you fell down into the zip. So that was my first little bit of disquiet at this 5-star hotel. And then on the morning of our Curious Live, it was an early start, wasn't it, Sharon? And I leapt in the shower wanting a good old, lovely hot shower that I could have a real wake up. And I really struggled with the shower. It was hot. In fact, it was so hot, I couldn't stand underneath it. And it was not a particularly vigorous stream coming out of the shower. So it was so hot, I couldn't turn it down either. So I could either sort of stick a bit under like this, as you do. But I couldn't get myself completely under, so it didn't really do what I wanted it to. So I felt, I'm paying quite a lot of money for this, but I'm not getting good value. Because the good value I wanted was a decent night's sleep and a good shower in the morning. When I came back that night, there were some nice touches in the room. They'd seen I got a book, and there was a lovely little bookmark there with the hotel on it, really nice, and two nice chocolate mints as well. I thought, oh, that's a very nice little touch. But those are additional extras. And actually, I wanted the basics. I wanted a comfortable bed, and I wanted that shower. And I was telling this to everybody at Curious Live. This was before I got the bookmark and things. And we thought it highlighted a really fundamental thing, that before you can start to think about your value, you've got to make sure that you have the basics right. You have got to have your teaching skills in place, and you've got to know what it is you're teaching. So a lot of the things that we're offering here are for everybody to think about, but you've got to make sure as a teacher that you've had some basic fundamental training so that you know how to teach technique, you know how to teach reading, you know how to teach and motivate beginners with repertoire, etc. Then you can really start to offer very good value from what you do. But you cannot offer value if there is not a fundamental, really good pool of understanding from you yourself. Just thought I'd start with that. So, as before, we're going to hand over. I'm going to hand over to Gareth to start us off, and he's going to be talking about how to pre-frame yourself before the lessons begin. He's going to talk for 15 minutes. We're going to go then on to Angie, and then we're going to go on to Sharon. If you've got comments, if you've got questions, please put them in the chat straight away, and then there'll be time to return to those at the end of the meeting. Okay, so we're not going to interrupt our speakers. We're going to let them speak, but please do add your questions there. So I'm going to ask Gareth to unmute, and I'm going to spotlight him for everyone and say, okay, Gareth, over to you. You have the floor. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Sally. I do want to talk quite a lot about how we pre-frame our value, but I wanted to start off with something else, which was to introduce the concept of quality into our discussion. And I think quality is a really fascinating word in this discussion because it has two meanings. There's quality as in high quality, like the kind of thing you would expect as a teacher, like a high standard. The kind of thing you'd expect from a 5-star hotel, you expect high quality. But we also have characteristics, and those are also qualities. So I have the quality of being quite forgetful, but quite a good listener. Both of those are qualities that make me the person that I am. Some would say that the quality of being quite forgetful is not a high quality attribute, but it is who I am, and we use the word for both. And I think the reason I bring that up is because I think we are working at our best when we are aware of our own qualities, as in our characteristics, and we find students whose needs are best met by those characteristics. And so that might, in my case, mean I think I work particularly well with students who are going through a difficult time, people who are experiencing vulnerability or loneliness or mental health difficulties. I work particularly well with people who are creative, who are slightly off the ball. I'm not particularly good with people who are super ambitious. I'm not particularly good with teaching repertoire over grade 8 level. And those are all attributes of who I am as a teacher. They're my qualities. And so when I'm pre-filtering students, I'm thinking, how can I find the students that are going to help me give the highest possible quality service to those students? And the filtering process is part of that. So I'm going to introduce a concept which comes from the hospitality industry. If you attended the previous sessions, you'll know that I used to work in youth hostels, not 5-star hotels. And we did a thing called the customer journey. And I remember I was about 21 or 22 when I first encountered that term, and it made me cringe a little bit. A customer journey, it sounds very sort of, let's go on a journey. But the more I've thought about the concept, the more I found it useful. And so I'm going to hopefully present the concept to you in a way that's useful. And then I'm going to take you on a sort of simulated customer journey that will show you how I select my students and how they find me and what they experience when they find that. So there's really 3 steps to a customer journey. It'd be interesting to think about it in terms of Sally's experience actually booking that hotel. Step 1 is, how did the student become aware of us? How did Sally find that hotel? Second step is, how do we persuade the student, or how did the hotel persuade Sally to make that booking, to take the first step? And then the third step is, how do we retain their custom? And it sounds to me like it's unlikely that Sally's going to be going back to that hotel again, although who knows, maybe she wants to try a youth hostel. The Let's talk about it one step at a time. The first thing is to think about how your clients might find you, and I think it's really crucial to know this. And if you don't know how your clients have found you, you should absolutely be asking them, and you should be making sure that it's in your registration form. It's really important. The three main routes that my students find me are word of mouth, Google, and Google Maps. And I'm going to show you those experiences, not the word of mouth one, but the other two. So when I can't go into word of mouth that much because I'd obviously have to talk to my clients and that doesn't really work. But in terms of a client who's new to me and finding me, I do get quite a lot of inquiries. And I know that they find me through Google and Google Maps. And so what I've tried to do is I've tried to make sure that my website ranks really highly on the Google search. I've tried to make sure that the presentation of my Google listing, my Google Maps presentation, and my own website are good, that there's reviews, particularly on Google Maps, and then it's easy to get in touch with me. And that means that I'm not difficult to get hold of, and they just have a good experience. Then I've also thought quite carefully about what kind of information I want to communicate with them as part of, another cringe word, the onboarding process. I'm very careful with what I say to them, and I will show you some of the stuff that I say. And then in terms of that onboarding process, I'm really trying to think about how do I select the students that I really want, that are going to fit well with me, so that I can offer them a high value experience. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to share my screen, and I'm going to talk you through the customer journey that my students take when they find me through Google and through Google Maps. So here we go. I'm going to put you... Here's my Firefox. The first thing you want to know when you're doing this is that the only way to get really useful results is to use incognito or private browsing. Because if you're doing a Google search and Google knows a vast amount of information about you, you will not get useful results because you will get the things that you are used to seeing. So I'm going to go into File and I'm going to open a private window, and then I will open Google. Reject all those. So I'm going to search. I live in Frankfurt in Germany. I teach in English. I'm going to search for piano lessons Frankfurt, and I'm not the top result. We'll skip the maps for a second. I'll come back.
We can't actually see what.
Oh, you can't see my screen?
Well, we can see the Google screen, but nothing. I could see you were, yes, moving around and tapping.
Gareth, it's because you opened a new tab, the incognito tab.
Oh, right. Sorry. Let me do a new share. Apologies. Okay. Thank you for telling me that. That would have been awkward in the extreme. Here we go. Okay, so here's my... Can you see it all now? Good. Okay. So there's the Google Maps at the top. I'll come back to that in a second. If you look here, I'm looking for clients who speak English primarily, although I do take some German clients. But so I'm immediately, as the parent of a child who speaks English, I'm going to skip all these German results. The first one that I come across is Angelina Mehmetan. So I'm going to open that one. I think I'll open it in another tab. Hopefully when I open another tab, you'll be able to see it. Can you see that when I change? Yes, good. Okay, I'm going to go back to the results. So then there's another load of ones that I'm going to disregard because there's a load of German ones there. I don't want German lessons. I'm going to go to page 2 because I've only found one German teacher, one English teacher, and there I am right at the top. So, and then we've got the 10 best piano teachers in Frankfurt, Germany. I'm probably not on there. Right, so I'm going to come back to my own page in a second. I'm going to go and have a look at Angelina's website. I don't know Angelina, and I'm not going to say anything negative or positive about her. I'm just going to observe it from a very objective point of view. She writes it in English, which is a big tip, a big positive for me. Very quickly, she mentions the ABRSM. That's maybe interesting to me personally. As for me, I'm not particularly interested in doing that. So maybe not. She teaches in English, German, Mandarin, and Cantonese. There's some nice quotes. There's a price list, which is very affordable, I would say, particularly for the beginners. Yeah, it's not too bad actually. Yeah, and that's quite a lot of useful stuff. If you go onto my website by contrast, you'll immediately see a really big smiley face of me looking kind, which is the kind of message that I want to bring across. And right at the top, you'll see that Gareth is a wonderful teacher with enormous talent for teaching young people. That's a quote from a parent. And then there's various things that I talk about there. The top link is a link to my Spotify profile, which looks quite good if you're into Spotify stats, because I have quite a lot of looks like I'm showing off now, but I have quite a lot of streams on Spotify. So that impresses a certain type of client. And then there's various places where I've written. There's a thing about my teaching philosophy. There's photos of my studio, various other things. And then right at the bottom, you can see my Curious Piano Teachers thing there, at the bottom of the screen, hopefully, and my EPTA memberships. So that's a sign that I know what I'm doing. On the qualifications page, you can see all the things that I've done. And crucially, at the bottom of every page, there is this registration form, which is very easy to fill in. I'm just going to go back to Angelina's one and see how she does it. Does she have a registration form? No, so she just has her address, a phone number, and an email. That's fine, but I think a registration form is generally a better onboarding process. So this is my music staff. I really like it. I've actually changed this form recently based on something that Angie told me. She might spot it in a sec. It's fairly obvious, most of the stuff to begin with. In the About the Student section, I specifically ask for their fluency level in English, because I'm trying to work with people who are English speaking as much as possible. I specifically ask how many hours of practice can the student commit to every week. That's from Angie, she knows, I can see it on her face. And there's this. Do you have a piano with 88 weighted keys? That's another one from Angie, I think. Because I actually don't want to deal with students who don't own a piano and are never going to own a piano. I just don't want to. So yeah. So Sally, how long have I got now? Just give me a sense. Sorry, 5 minutes. Okay.
About 5 minutes, just straight on. Okay.
Thank you very much. So you will see as you go through this that I've tried to introduce things that reflect who I am as a teacher. So right at the start, I've talked, sorry, let me go back to the homepage. I talk about performance and composition, improvisation, composition, music theory. I'm trying to make it clear that I do quite a broad stuff, but by emphasizing the composition stuff with the top link, I'm trying to emphasize that. And I'm hoping to sort of filter out students who are nervous or who don't want to do that kind of thing at all. That's the goal. And if you look at my teaching philosophy page, you'll see my opening sentences. My goal as a teacher is to instill a love of musical creativity that will nourish my students throughout their lives. And that sentence is really carefully worded. I'm not interested in short-term goals, I'm interested in long-term goals. Creativity is mentioned. It's nourishing, it's about love, it's not about achievement necessarily. And the whole page is designed to reflect that. I'm not saying that my website is perfect, there's certainly not, but it does reflect who I am as a teacher, hopefully. The other thing I'd like to do is share with you the draft of the email that I respond to clients with. I'll just stop my share for a second. So I think one of the most important moments that we have in engagements with all clients, even those who don't become clients, is how do we respond to their very first inquiry? And I really think every response should be relatively prompt, within the first 24 or 48 hours. It should be friendly, and it should mention you by name, the person you're writing to. And it should sort of set a benchmark of expectations. So I have a draft email prepared that I use. Just opening my email thing. Let me share that screen with you. 1 second. I've currently got no emails in my inbox, which is quite an achievement. So this is my draft email. thank you very much for registering your interest in students' name, taking piano lessons with me. I really love teaching something that is specific to the student. So that might say, I really love teaching, helping adults return to the piano, or I really love teaching kids who are excited about playing the piano, or whatever. There's space to answer the question. And then there are two sections here. If I'm not sure about the client, I say, I'm afraid I don't have the capacity to take on new students at the moment, but I will be in touch if that changes. And in the meantime, here's a load of other places you could go to. And good luck with your search. And then below that, there's the or section is all about when I'm interested in the student, but I'm not sure. And I invite them to meet me. I give them clear links. I talk you through my contract answer. So I already state the fact that there's going to be a contract. They have an expectation. Ask any questions that you might have. I say they're free of charge and there's no obligation to continue. And then I give them a few options. And then I also say you can reach my student studio through public transport, and you can cycle here and that kind of thing, but you can drive. And that's because I really want to encourage people to do more public transport and cycling. So that's kind of me as well. And then, so hopefully they are interested in me. And then what I do is I introduce them to my studio. And I was hoping to give you a bit more of a tour of my studio. I couldn't get it to work on the iPad that I was going to use. So I'm going to use my iPhone camera to give you a little mini tour. Let me just stop sharing that screen and switch camera, hopefully. As I put a lot of time into this studio, and it does reflect who I am as a person quite well. Okay, hopefully this is going to work. Yes, there's a beautiful picture of my desk. There you guys are. So if you look around, you're going to see that I have a vast number of plants in my room. They are everywhere. And that's because I love plants, fundamentally. I also have a lot of books. Up there, I have an upright piano mechanism, which I found on the street and thought was very cool. So I use that in my lessons. Lots of books, loads of art. My wife is an artist, and it's everywhere. So that's important. And that's something that I talk about very early on in the session. It's a comfortable room. It's a calming room. And it's quite nice. It's also got my composition desk there. And sometimes I leave that set up if I've been working so that students know that they have another opportunity to talk about the composition stuff. And what I found is that people very quickly mention the fact that I've got hundreds of plants. And I really like that because I think the plants represent something for me. They represent calm. It's a calming space. They represent good air quality. And they also show that I can nurture things. And I have got a bit of a green finger, and I really enjoy doing it. And so I think they represent that. I wrote a couple of other things.
It's just about, you're out of time, really. So if you want to just wrap up what you're saying.
So my studio is colourful. It's creative, and it's a little bit unpredictable. Like there's some stuff in here you're not going to find. And that's what my lessons are hopefully going to be like. Caring, nurturing, colourful, creative, and a bit unpredictable. And that's my customer journey. And I would encourage you to think about what your customers' journeys have been. Okay, that's me. Bye-bye.
All right. Thank you so much for that really interesting, insightful session through the customer journey. Thank you. Right. So I'm just going to ask Angie now to unmute. And I'm going to replace. There we go. Thank you, Angie. Over to you.
Okay, so very swiftly, just want to show my face and say hello to everybody. Part 3, and I will now move on to sharing my slide. Sorry. Okay. Right, here we are, part 3. Now, just a quick throwback to part 2. In part 2, I talked about the unique situation with piano teaching, because unlike other educational establishments where, in school, it's yearly, you have a yearly teacher. And I think even universities, you have different lecturer, you have modules. There is always an endpoint and it's very visible. But with us piano teachers, we like to hang on to our pupils, hopefully for a long time. And our promise is this future skill, being a musician for life, having this love for music. And that takes time, a lot of time to cultivate. So in part two, I talked about the need to shorten the time to value as a marketer. So, how quickly can we get the value visible to our pupils themselves as learners, as well as to the people holding the purse strings who are paying for these lessons? Okay, so today we're in part three, and I thought it would be very interesting to think about it like this picture. So, we talked about in part one, when parents think about piano lessons as being expensive, it is because they are standing shrouded from the value. The value of piano lessons is hidden. So the value is represented in the box, the music, the love for music, the joy, the happy, the glow you get, the happiness that you get from performing music, and the love and being part of this musical family, people who can play music. And then I had this tiny little certificate. It might be an examination certificate, for example. It might be your GCSE music qualification or an A-level qualification. That is all in this box because the parent or the people paying for that fees, they can't see that. It's hidden. Whereas think about on the right hand side, all these parents who can see through the box because we let them view this value that we're delivering, and we let them view this glimpse, and notice that the box is actually opaque. It's not completely invisible, it's opaque, and you show them all the time, just little messages all the time. So I'd like you to keep this in mind as I talk you through some of my ideas, or certainly the concepts that I've actually been delivering in the past decade of teaching. Okay, so now I'd like to kind of go back to the idea of the quality. I think the quality that Sally first mentioned earlier on. What is the foundation and bedrock of piano teaching? And also the qualities that Gareth was pre-framing. Now, I'm moving this forward into our pupils now. We've got them now, we've signed them up, and they are in our studio. So the first item in terms of thinking about value and being visible is visible learning, our pupil themselves. From the first lesson, I think it is our bread and butter, our big job is for them to come into the lesson, work on something, and when they leave that lesson that day, they are fully aware of what they have learned in that lesson. Now, the question I'd like you to think is, reflect back on just a sample, one student that you taught yesterday. Is it clear to that pupil when they said goodbye? Is it clear to them what they have achieved in that lesson? What they didn't do before that lesson, and what they could do. Now, were they clear walking out? Now, you may be clear, or I may be clear as a teacher, but how does the pupil know when they walked out that door that they've been transformed, they have new knowledge, or they have moved their skill forward? Now, I will give you a clue. It is not the sticker that says well done, okay? Because that's the gloss. That's the bit that you add on top to seal the deal. It is also not the well done, you did great today, and you wave them off the door. It's not that, because, great, I get a compliment, but actually, what was it for? Okay. Now, if that child goes into the front seat of the car and the mum drives away, and the mum say, How did lesson go today? Is that child, is that pupil able to say, I did this, I can play this bit now? Now, would that child be able to say that? Because I'm not convinced every lesson that I deliver that a child walks out and can do that. Yeah, I'm not perfect, but I do try every lesson. If I think that I have waved a pupil out the door and the pupil isn't clear, then my lesson note will make that very clear in the email. And this is important. This is why we can't have back-to-back lessons. So I have a 5 to 10 minute gap between pupils exactly to deliver that visible learning every lesson. It gives me that reflection time because by the time I teach the next pupil, that's gone. Yeah. So that's one thing to park with you. Okay. Now, what else could I deliver in terms of that visible value after that lesson itself? Now, with a slightly older pupil, I require that they bring with them a recording device. This is really unusual, and I caused lots of problem in school because schools in the UK have, state schools anyway, have forbidden the use of phones. They can't carry them visibly in school anymore. However, with a lot of effort, persuasion, I've managed to kind of loosen that rule in the schools that I teach. So they are allowed to have the device in lesson because whenever they achieve that visible learning, that incremental skill, we video it on the pupil's personal device because number one, I want them to go home and make that skill permanent in their practice. And number two, when they're at home and they view it back, it is great for all sorts of learners because it reinforces the success. They relive that lesson experience at home. And even if they had a shorter term working memory, which I have a lot of pupils with short term working memory, they've forgotten the skill. The fingers can't do it anymore, but they have this reassurance that I did it in lesson and it looked like that and it sounded like that. And I always make sure that my visual, it's only the hands on the piano. And I always say in the background at the end of each, make that permanent and great job in lesson today. I'll see you next week. So that is very visible to the learner themselves. So that's for an older student. And I'm sharing this because I know it can work in school too. And I teach in a state school where the devices are allowed to be shared. It's not on my device in school, it's on the pupil's device. That's how I got over the data protection and safeguarding aspects. Okay, now we move on then. How visible is it? Oh, sorry, before I move on, I wanted to kind of share that in our curious community, we have been looking and focusing on visible learning in our Curious Box in March and April 2024. Now, I love this because this Curious Box really changed and made me reflect and review on my own teaching. Because if you pick up John Hattie's Teaching for Success book, and I do have it, it's a really hard read. And thankfully, with the Curious Piano Teachers, it has been distilled into very digestible components with a worksheet for you to help you rethink. So for members of Curious Piano Teachers community, you don't need to think on your own, how do I achieve this? What's this visible learning about? Just go and visit the box and make it your priority this summer to go through the box. It's so easy to do this.
5 minutes, Angie.
Right. Move on, Angie. Visible pianist then. Now notice I didn't say visible student. So I refer to my pupils as young pianists in all my communication to parents. So from day one, they are young pianists. how are we making music and piano a central part of their lives, you know? How, with the little ones, the younger ones, how do you encourage them so that their play dates include them going to the piano at their house and playing a little something for their friends? Yeah. How do you give them, for the ones who don't have piano friends, how do you match them up with fellow students in your own studio so that they can have a peer group that instill the love for piano? I belong to the Oxford Piano Group, and I have adult piano friends who are not teachers. And we gather, thanks to Sally, every month online or in person to just share music. Yeah. And how can you make your students, the ones who are called on in school for events, yeah, to play music, to be part of music community? How visible they are to their in-school music teachers. You know, what does the music teachers write in their annual report card? This is the time to ask parents, actually, because if the music teachers in school aren't aware that they're pianists, then you need to help them get that visibility up. And it's all too easy, I think, as piano teachers to say, oh, we're piano teachers, we teach piano. That really is the realm of the parents and the students. But I disagree because I think it is part of our job, really, to help our pupils grow in their reputation to be young musicians from start. Right. And one more thing, purse holder, parents. I think we need to be visible too, because I put myself as the expert when it comes to music. If a pupil is approaching 11 plus and the scholarship opportunities on the horizon, I need to know what those opportunities are in my area and what's available for my pupils in that age group. When a pupil arrives at the end of year 8, around this time, I start having conversation to know whether GCSE music in the UK, well, I operate in the UK, so GCSE music, is it even a choice? Is it even on their radar in terms of a subject that the pupil might want to choose? And if so, I actually instigate the conversation and I give the parents often more information than they get on GCSE Open Day, Information Day in schools. I can actually show this is the stuff that you're going to be learning, which is a lot broader than just piano lessons cover. And I can then explain this is what we can do so that your piano lessons supplement what is going to be the challenge for your GCSE years and beyond. So we have to be the expert. We have to be the high quality teacher with the information. And that's how you deliver value. And that's how you can be the premium piano teacher. You can't be a premium piano teacher if you don't know your stuff. So that's the challenge. Finally, I'll talk about the visible teacher. What is our reputation in the neighborhood, in the school that we teach, in the local festivals where our pupil play, or actually in the exam center? You know, are, are your pupils the ones who waltz in very confidently, sit their exam, and walk out? Or are they the ones who are unprepared and are worried and not quite sure what to do? So all those things are the things that decides what I deliver in my day-to-day lesson. Yeah, not just the repertoire and teaching how to read notes. So we are responsible for the whole pupil, the holistic person of a future musician. So 2 minutes, Sally. So here are the things for teachers in school. 2 minutes, 2 minutes.
Quick 2 minutes.
Right. How do I know when I don't see parents? So I'm a peripatetic teacher too. So what happens to being visible if you're in a school where you don't have contact with parents? Okay. So I get feedback indirectly. For example, the first comment was after a carol service, and the head of music and the head of school said to me, "Your pupils are booked for the next carol service. They're providing the music in between acts." Okay, so they're young musicians already. And these are just elementary pupils. This is primary school. Okay. Now, the second one I just received, I was very proud. It said, this was a senior school, and the head of music said, "Yes, some parents, other parents have watched you and your pupils in concert, and I've blocked out the whole room for Wednesday next year for you. I'll move the other teacher because she knows that there will be parents asking for places directly with me." Okay, this is a school with 3 piano teachers, and I am the piano teacher of choice because I'm visible during concerts. And then the last one, the last bit was a comment from the head teacher because she is seeing that I'm working and reaching pupils who school otherwise, academically and pastorally can't reach them on a personal basis. However, they have been welcomed into the music department and really engaged in school as a result of having piano lessons. So it's these things that tells me that I'm delivering value. And I hope that it will inspire others to do the same and seek out this sort of feedback so that you know you're delivering value. Okay? And that's the end of my presentation.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Angie. I think lots and lots of food for thought from both Gareth and from Angie there. And, these are all things that you can just write down and think, okay, how do I get there? Don't expect to do it overnight. It's a process and a reflective process of backwards and forwards about what's working. So I'm going to hand over now to Sharon and just spotlight her and say, okay, Sharon, over to you. Thank you.
Lovely. Thank you, Sally. And thank you, Gareth and Angie, for those, again, continued thoughts. I think this conversation that we have started has, one, it's got to continue, and I think it has the potential to move things a lot for us in terms of, I think mainly in terms of, for us as professional teachers. We've already talked about this, and Sally opened with this. We're at a different end of the spectrum than teachers who are doing this without any proper pedagogical training. So I'm now going to share my screen, and today I am going to walk you through ChatGPT. This is a kind of a fairly new thing for me. April of this year, I was sat in a training session on this. I didn't realize it had quite the potential that it does. This is an area that, AI, it's something that's been floating around for quite a while. I think for most of us, we don't know whether to be completely terrified by it or to embrace it. But for those of you who may be still used to using Google to get some sort of answers, to find out a little bit more, to do a little bit of research, I'm going to suggest instead that you get yourself a basic free ChatGPT account. So it just means you can put into Google ChatGPT. It will bring you to somewhere where you put in your email, you choose a password, and you will then, with this free account, you will build up, with the questions that you ask it, it will build up a little memory for you. Sally and I have, as of last week, talked about doing this for the curious piano teachers, and educating ChatGPT. So I want to show you today what it can do. I want you to, let's begin by this question here. What's on your mind? Is there a question that you want to pop into the chat? I won't be able to see it, but I will. I can type in. Keep it quite short. For example, okay, Angie has just referred to John Hattie's Teaching for Success. Okay, let's say you know nothing about this and you're curious. So I am just going to put in summarize John Hattie's Teaching for Success in, let's say, 5 bullet points. And this is what will happen. Okay, so you can see it working there. And there you have something neatly summarized. And that's the one big thing I'm going to start by saying. Google will give you, you put something into Google and it will overwhelm you instantly. This, as a research, as a kind of work along partner, will summarize things for you. So there you go. Okay, so you get a little bit into the background of that. And of course, the better you ask the question, the better the response you will get. I'm going to come to your questions in a minute. As I say, because I'm in full screen here, I can't see, but I hope there's a couple of things coming into the chat that I can ask. Earlier today, I put this in, okay? So I asked, you can see it here, what were the top 10 questions being asked about piano teaching services in BT32, which is my postcode, in June 2025. So here it has pulled for me the questions that interested people have, in my postcode, have put in. There's the number one question. Again, interestingly, links back into what Garreth has in his initial form. Okay, do I need to own a piano to take lessons? Now, you might say, okay, so why is this of interest to me? Well, if you have a website, if you have social media channels, you can answer these questions because you know that people in your area are asking these questions. This is what people want to know. I have looked at something else as well. Okay, so I also put here, I need to create a contract for my piano teaching studio. I want this to be a legally binding document that is no more than 2 to 3 pages long and stipulates that all missed lessons will be charged for. Also want this to be a 10-month contract that is easy for parents to understand. Okay, I love the way it comes back to you. It just goes, it's like your little personal worker. It goes, fantastic. Let's help you create a concise, clear and professional contract for your piano studio. And it gives you a starting point. So when you go, okay, right, so I need a contract. I don't have a contract. Where do I begin? If you turn to ChatGPT, it will give you a starting point. So you can see here a layout. Okay, there are a couple of points. And it will then also give you questions or something at the end, okay? Would you like me to adjust this template for specific ages, rates, lesson lengths, or any other policies? Okay, you're wondering what sort of policies you need to have in place as a piano teacher. Don't Google it, put it into ChatGPT. I put this in earlier as well. I'm a highly skilled, highly qualified Master's in Music Education and highly professional piano teacher, but I struggle to communicate my value. So you remember what we were saying the last day, that one of the challenges I think we all struggle with is communication. So I've asked it, what are your top 10 actionable tips to help me get my messaging clear, succinct and compelling to piano parents? Now again, this is just, I wasn't thinking about this for too long, I just put this in, but the better and the more detailed and the more specific your questions are, the more detailed, specific an answer you will get back. So here we are. Yeah, we have got, I'm just going to go through a few of them. We have got 10 points. Identify what sets you apart. So there is your first task. Okay, it links again nicely into the current, well, not so current, but the May-June curiosity box, of which there is going to be some more stuff coming. But there are some ideas there for, okay, what is it that sets you apart? And of course, it will give you a couple of things. Number 2, focus on benefits, not just features. Okay, craft a positioning sentence. And again, you can then specifically go back into ChatGPT and you can ask it for a little bit of help or advice, or you can put it in and you realize, okay, so I've just done this, but it's actually, it's a couple of sentences. Put it in and ask it to bring you back something for your website in, you know, let's say you want to say something in 100 words, but you're currently sitting at 500. You can just put the text in and say, make this compelling, succinct. I want this, the gist of this in 100 words. So you don't have to sit for ages going, oh no, that's not quite right. Yeah. And then it will give you that inspiration. And from there, you can develop and you can build that. Okay. It's not to say that it's not, and it does, you will see as you sign up for an account, it will say that this is not always going to be accurate. You're not going to be able to sue ChatGPT if you've got something not quite right. But it gives you a starting point, which I think so often we struggle with. We kind of know the general gist of what we want to say. We know it's not quite right. It's not quite the text that we want to be able to put on our website, but, or even the text for a particular Instagram or Facebook post. But go in and ask it and it will refine it for you.
That's 5 minutes left now, Sharon. Do you want a question? Because Gareth's come up with one.
Yes, let's put a question in. So I'm going to go into new chat. So here we go. Where should we begin? Go for it.
Okay, so I'll read it out for you, Gareth. It's how do I politely respond to a student who clearly didn't read my email I asked them if they could attend a makeup lesson next Wednesday. But they didn't answer that question and instead asked about lessons in the new school year.
Asked about lessons
in the new school year. That's it.
School year. Okay. So let's see. So we've got, thanks for your message. I'd be happy to discuss plans for the new school year, but first, could you please let me know whether you're available for the makeup lesson next Wednesday, as I mentioned in my previous email. Once we confirm that, we can definitely talk about next year's schedule. So I think I'm going to wrap what I'm kind of, because I'd love us just to be able to come back and discuss and to kind of pull all this together. But my objective for doing this today is to show you, rather than going, oh, yeah, put it in and you can see. No, it's not to say that you, but again, you've got template, you've got a starting point. And again, here it will again give you a little bit of follow-up. You know, would you like it shorter, firmer, or more casual? Actually, let's go with it. How can someone type in? Do we want it shorter, firmer, or more casual? And let's just see what we get. And then I'll come off screen.
Over to you, Gareth. Why don't you unmute, because it's come from you. And
that's a good question. I'm relatively happy with it, actually. But I think
kind
a
of
little
hypothetical.
Yeah, a little bit firmer, maybe, without losing the politeness.
More firm without losing politeness. Okay, before we discuss lessons for the new school year, I need to know whether you're available for the makeup lesson next Wednesday, as I asked in my previous message. Please let me know as soon as possible so I can finalise the schedule. Okay? So, I am wondering, was there anything else? Oh yes, I put this on. I'm just going to, finally, this was one. Give me 5 compelling reasons for having lessons with a piano teacher who has qualifications in piano pedagogy, and why paying extra for this is worth it. And they come back from a fantastic question, and very wise to consider the value rather than just the cost of piano lessons. Here are 5 compelling reasons why studying with a piano teacher who has qualifications in piano pedagogy and paying a little bit extra for that expertise is worth it. And again, do you see what I mean? They're not sending you off to a blog that you have to read and extract stuff from. You have got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 specific things. It's summarized. Again, would you like it summarized more briefly or tailored for a specific situation?
here's a question for it, Sharon.
Oh, sorry, I've
Yeah,
just come on.
that's all right.
Right, okay. Yeah.
You know, this is all, yeah,
Again, let me share. Yep, go ahead.
something like, so I'm a novice teacher. What should I teach a pupil in their first 10 lessons? A 7-year-old, let's say.
A
A
novice
se-
What should I teach?
piano teacher.
And-
Novice piano.
Yes, I'm a novice piano teacher. Yeah. What should I teach a 7-year-old
For their first
in their first 10 lessons?
year, first 10 lessons. Got Rain. Wonder, is that from the Curious Piano Teacher?
Not likely.
Okay.
Okay,
Probably.
so
Too fast.
yeah. Maybe ask it. Yeah, okay, interesting.
Going.
Piano Safari. Look at the method books it's coming out with.
Yeah. Okay. Keep lesson very fun. Games, movement,
Yeah.
singing. Okay, so I think then, so we come to this. So, Sally, can we, or anyone else, can we have something more?
What about in the style of the curious, following the curious piano teachers, or some? I'm not sure whether you'd say it quite like that, but following the principles, the teaching principles of the curious piano teachers.
Following the principles.
Okay, that's a good one, Anastasia. She's just signed up for it and asked it why would I want a piano teacher who has experience of Kodaly methodology? And then, of course, you can turn that round, can't you? If you agree with it. Not necessarily, you don't always agree with it, I would hasten to say, but always take it.
Okay, so there you go. Develop listening musical awareness, confident keyboard geography, secure pulse and simple rhythm patterns. Again, it's not entirely.
It's quite interesting. Yeah.
But isn't it? And
Yeah.
again, it does, it stimulates thought where otherwise sometimes we might get a little stuck. Again, you could ask it to be a little bit more specific in terms of, something in terms of piano safari.
Yeah.
Okay, so interestingly there it's gone with black key pieces.
And some white key ones, I think, as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting. Any curious piano teachers own materials if you're a member?
Interesting. Yeah. Very good.
Anyway, so that is the rather intriguing world of having a conversation with ChatGPT.
Indeed. Well, thank you. Let me go back to my little notes that I was making here. So, thank you so much, the three of you. Gareth, your discussion of quality and this customer journey. In fact, it related back to something, again, Sharon and I were talking about last weekend, how many of us as piano teachers think about it from the parent point of view, their journey through lessons, because we think of it from our perspective, but maybe you were encouraging us really to think about it from the customer experience. And I think finding yourself on just checking out your ranking through incognito, I think that's a very good top tip, because I forget to use incognito really. So very good top tip. And Google and using Google Maps. Do you use that, Gareth? Can I just ask you the question? Do you use that rather than subscribe to any teaching sites that recommend teachers? I mean, there's musicteachers.co.uk or something in the UK. I don't know whether there's anything similar in Germany, is there?
Yes, there is, and I used to pay for an advert, but I analysed the returns on the payment, and it wasn't really worth it. And I do get a lot of people through Google, I mean, comparatively, and that's not really cost me anything apart from the fees for running the website, and then the time to invest. This is search engine optimization, SEO, which I've spent a bit of time thinking about. So it's cost me more in time than it has in money. But I don't spend any on advertising now.
And do you have I don't even know what to call it, but a Google profile that opens up? Yeah.
Although it's weird because I've got this composer profile as well, so sometimes things get a bit mixed up, and that kind of works for me because I want to teach that kind of thing anyway. But if you search for me, you often get you get a mix of like teaching and composing stuff. But if you go on Google Maps and search for piano lessons Frankfurt, you will almost certainly see Gareth's piano studio. And if you then look, I've got to do this during the presentation, but you can see my studio very easily, and you see my name right on the on the main page of Google Maps for the city, and that's cool, I think.
Yeah. No, that's really useful. And the registration form and having draft emails, and maybe linking with Sharon, use the ChatGPT to create these draft emails that you then keep in a folder that you then just can send out. So it's cutting down on paperwork time, isn't it? The thing we all least enjoy, I would suggest, maybe. And there's such a lovely environment of your studio. So thank you so much for sharing that with us. I don't know whether anybody had any further questions for Gareth from anything that he was doing at all. I think that being really clear in your website is really fundamental, and making sure you show who you are through what you put. Use ChatGPT to help you to do that. It all comes together, really, doesn't it? I thought, Angie, I know you've been answering questions there, about the starting with short clips. Gillian was saying about recording on your student's device. I can only imagine the amount of time, though, you spent with your school making that all roll out.
Yes, I think the first thing is, Sharon's contract, having a contract in place with the parents very quickly, because I have an addendum all about using responsibility, using data protection, what's my policy, what's allowed to be used in lesson, making it all clear from day zero before lesson begin. It's very easy for me to persuade senior leadership because I have that. Parents have agreed and approved. And then the school say, fine. And that's it.
Yeah.
So it wasn't onerous. Literally is me talking to the head of music. I think it comes with the fact that if I'm visible and I'm contributing and the efforts can be seen and felt, all my asks becomes easy.
Yes.
But if you're unknown and who are you to ask this, that the answer is a no immediately because nobody knows who you are. So I think that's the first thing. If you give something to the school, all you ask, I mean, I don't need to ask nowadays, like I had the room cleared for me for next year's schedule.
I think it's fair to say, though, Angie, you have a fair degree of confidence. At least you come over as having a fair degree of confidence and a real
That makes a
commitment.
difference.
And it makes a huge difference. Any advice for teachers who really are not sure, who actually would rather just stay in their teaching room? How can they start to make these contacts in school? And, teachers who are going in on very little, on a lower wage than they should be, yeah, and they've got to get straight off to their next place, and they don't actually have the time, the physical time, to make these inroads. And any advice you could give them?
I think we have to make the time. I think if you are first starting out with a music service, I think the conversation need to be had with your music service that you need to build the relationship with this school because this is only going to end up with more enrollment for the music service. And that will give you a bit more room in your day in a school rather than having 20 minutes to dash from school A to B. I think I think more now than ever that music services are actually struggling getting the enrollment for numbers in school. Um, they will understand the need because I know that the music service teachers are handing school assembly, showcasing the instruments, etc. But the reality is the children don't hold a purse string to signing up to music lessons. It is actually the administrator, who is going to, in school, who's going to put the leaflet into the children's, reception book bags,
Yeah, yeah.
It is the head teacher who is going to be putting in newsletter, we are offering music lessons, you know, all this relationship with the school is what the music service or the co-op or your private music school that's going to serve these local schools, that's valid marketing spend. And it is not the head of keyboard who is not teaching the student who is making that relationship. It's the teacher who is on the ground. And I'm in the process of exiting from an existing state school, a primary school, and the music service is sending in a piano teacher. unfortunately, that teacher is going to have a hard time because the office administrator is telling me yesterday was my moving day, so I moved out of the school, and the administrator pleaded with me, can you not just come back because we don't like her?
Yeah, yeah.
So you can just know that the sign up for piano lesson is just going to tank in school.
And that's heartbreaking, isn't it? For as an individual who's who's built it up. Sorry, not broken it up. Built it up.
50% of the children learned piano, 50% of the
Yeah, yeah,
enrolled
yeah.
down to
However, you've got to look after yourself first and
yes.
foremost, and you are doing exactly that. And
That's a
I
question
think,
for ChatGPT, how to clone Angie.
yeah, how to clone Angie. Yeah. So, and I think again, it comes back to this idea that as a teacher, if you're not feeling confident enough to go and act on this within your school, then you need to equip yourself more. You need to get further training. Now, whether that is doing something like doing the piano teacher's course, or whether it's going to have some coaching about not even necessarily as a piano teacher, but just having coaching on how to present yourself, how to put your points over. But you can only put your points over if you've got the background to support it. Yeah. And it could be for those people who've just done the PTC, you are at the start of your journey, but you have got such a positive foundation there to actually go out and be persuasive in what you say. And it's not the only way of doing it, of course. There are other alternatives as well. Okay, thank you so much, Angie. Thank you. I thought it was fascinating. You said you can't be a premium teacher if you don't know your stuff. I think this is true. And I loved, Anastasia, that you're saying you didn't know very much about the chat GPT, but you've literally signed up, have you, during this? Okay, so Anastasia, just come off for a moment. How do you think you might use this now? Oh, you need to unmute.
Sorry. I just think I just need to explore it. I mean, I'm really interested that Angie used it for graphics and stuff like that because I'm constantly searching for things to put out on social media and I struggle with sometimes where to begin and just kind of being able to put in something slightly off the wall and it'll present you with something is quite appealing. But I just think I just need to go and have a play, really.
Absolutely. Just ask it to do something, tell it a little bit about yourself. You have to train it a little bit. Sharon, do you want to say something more about that?
I mean, for example, I've just, Sally asked that question about, in terms of any advice to help piano teachers communicate more confidently with schools. Again, I just typed it in and it just gives you starting points. And then of course you can hone in if you don't know something and ask it for a little bit more and a little bit more. And I think it's keep it kind of just manageable and small. Just go in, have a play, exactly like what you're saying, Anastasia. The other thing that I haven't yet mentioned is something called Plod, and I'm just going to drop it. I'm hoping that link will work. It looks rather long. Again, the guy who has kind of introduced me to all of this is something that he uses. So Sally and I were talking about this last week, and Chris, the guy who uses this, he does the same full day workshop in 7 locations in the UK. Okay, he switches this, so it's a physical device, okay, but it's AI. So this records him doing it recorded him doing, for example, his AI presentation back in April that I attended in Belfast. But he did it again in London, he did it again in Leeds, he did it again in 7 different locations throughout the UK. And then he just asks it to summarize. and it summarizes in however many words. I haven't used this, I haven't got the device, but I'm kind of wondering if we were to then use this in our piano lessons, how might it help us summarize? Again, I'm assuming we'd need to ask it in terms of policies, because again, it's recording a lesson. But I'm just thinking, you know, how useful could that be? I mean, I remember when I was doing case studies, when I was doing my master's research, you know, it was, you know, transcribing. I don't know how many hours I spent transcribing. And literally, this little device will do all the hard work for you and give you that summary, at which point you can then start to reflect, because it gives you, okay, this is what you covered in today's lesson. I think we probably do need to be careful that we're kind of using our brains, because I have seen a little diagram of, you know, ChatGPT and AI and then our actual mental thinking capacity. It's quite scary because we kind of, but again, let's just think about this is something that we now have, each of us have as a resource.
I think
how can it help us?
Yeah, how can it help us? But then
and how can it give us a unique selling point as well? Okay, because, you know, let's face it, piano teachers at large are not using this as a resource.
What it can't do, and I think this is really important, is it can't teach.
And
it can't replace you, and it can't replace the live interaction in the piano studio, and it can't tell you what you're doing wrong as a teacher and right as a teacher. So the live interaction is so important and will not change. So it's not a crutch to be a bad teacher with, but it can help as a good teacher you to focus yourself, for example, on marketing. I think it does.
Yeah, and even just
marketing.
Like what Anastasia has just put in, you know, I like the idea of using ChatGPT to summarize things. I can be quite wordy in email, social media, find it very hard. Yeah, I've been there. I know the pain of that, to cut it out without changing my meaning.
Yeah.
And so rather than us playing around with words for ages, you put it in. And I needed to do a blurb the other day. It was 100 words. Mine was way over. And I needed to have it sent within about 5 minutes. And yeah, I just put it in, did it. I think I maybe tweaked something, but there it was.
Yeah. So there's a tiny little point I want to pick up about the 100 words, or the 5 questions, or the 10 responses, or 100 characters. The more specific you can be, then often the better the responses I've got. So I might say, give me 5 possible posts for marketing on Facebook, and tell it a bit about yourself. I'm a piano teacher, I specialise in Kodai, lessons are blah, blah, blah. Give me 5 different posts that I could use. Yeah, and then it will come up with something, Anastasia.
Yeah.
Okay. Gareth?
Yeah, so one thing I found very useful with using AI is to say, I need help preparing this, whatever it is, a presentation or a lesson. What information do you need, the AI, to help me prepare this? And then it asks you a whole series of really interesting questions, often covering stuff that you've never thought of before. And that really helps shape your answers. I was just looking at my AI search history while we were talking, and I use it all the time. It's so useful. And for all sorts of things. So I'd really encourage you to explore. The one thing I would do, though, is not use ChatGPT full time. There's a website called perplexity.ai, and Perplexity analyzes your response and then picks which AI it will ask. So it either asks ChatGPT or Claude or Google's DeepSeek. And so because all of those have slightly different capabilities, the response is generally much better. I used it, for example, to help me figure out my lesson scheduling for next year. And it makes some mistakes, but once you point out its mistakes, it's incredibly smart and it really streamlined the process. So I'd encourage you to check it out.
Yes, I would echo what Sally is saying. It is not a crutch. So in order, I was just sharing in the chat saying that the graphics that I shared earlier on about the visible and invisible value, their entire graphics were created through ChatGPT. But in order to create that, I had to feed it. I had to already crystallize in my mind what that graphic should look like and where I want this position and that position and what it should look like conceptually. And the close, the more specific I input into it, the more specific and to the point that graphic is going to come out. It cannot just create something out of nothing because it has to be based on reflective thinking that we have already done.
Yeah, and it was interesting. There was an image I saw somebody had asked it to create this morning about a child looking perplexed in piano lessons or something like that. And it was an illustration again, but when you look closely, you could see that the black keys were not in the right arrangement. So always, always double check. But thank you for that little hint there about perplexity, Gareth, because I sometimes look along the list at the top and think, now, what does each one actually do? What is the difference between them? And I have occasionally gone off down a rabbit hole to try and find out. So I shall do that no longer. So I just want to bring us to a close because I feel as though we have had such a fascinating and rich experience through these value conversations. And I didn't actually realise when I first suggested these, I think just before Christmas in 2024, that we were going to be going into quite so much depth here. But I think we have added considerably to the whole conversation that surrounds how we value ourselves really as teachers, much more than just monetary value. I think that's where we have gone to. I'm sure, thank you very much, Gillian, for sharing that photograph. Oh, yes, yes. You won't be able to see this if you're watching this on catch up, but we have a photograph of piano keys that go threes and twos and threes and twos and twos and twos and twos. So do check. So I would just like to say a huge thank you once again to Gareth and to Angie and to Sharon for joining us over these three conversations. Any of you, a quick final sentence about what you've discovered maybe over the course of putting the three presentations together. How has your thinking changed, deepened, altered? They're all having a think, look. Gareth's thinking about going for his unmute button.
I mean, I think the thing that, this isn't new exactly, but I think the thing that's hardest for many people is to value yourselves. And I think that's the thing that is so fundamental to what we're doing. And I really would encourage everyone to not, I think it's very easy to think, oh, I've got all these flaws, and instead to try and think, how would your best friend describe you? Your best friend has chosen to be your best friend, and they know all of your good points. They probably know a lot of your weak points as well, and they choose to focus on the positive. And I think that's an enormously powerful thing for us to do, because I'm deeply flawed, like we all are, but I also know my value, and I charge my value, and I would encourage you to do all the same.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for that, Gareth. Angie, any thoughts?
I think I think this preparation for all this conversation put the word value or badged it, but I think I never thought of my actions and my decision making was always centered on value. You know, that wasn't the mind. I think what was the single thing that drives me in my decision and the way I teach and the way I be brave and do what I do in schools is all about, is this going?
Oh, they've lost you, Angie.
Hello?
Hello, yes, you're back. Yes, go on.
So the single thing I always think about is this going to be the best thing for my pupils
Yeah.
in that setting? And if you drive, I think personally, if I drive my entire behavior and my principles on that, then the value will just fall in, the feedback will come, the reputation will follow.
Yeah. Yeah. Putting the pupil centre, so important. Sharon, final thoughts?
Yeah. I think the value conversation has made a lot of us realize that there is a fairly quantum shift that is required within the profession. I think it links in really nicely with our Stronger Together, Curious Live 10th birthday title theme. I think that those of us who we know we give that value, but I think there is, in some cases, and I think that's what some of our members have been realizing, it's like, I give all this value, but I'm not the recipient of the level of value that I'm worth. I'm getting something that is much less than that and is on the level comparable to someone who is not as pedagogically sound and trained as I am. And I do think that going into the next decade, we do really need to think about this very seriously, because I think too often we're all just lumped together as piano teachers. And we know that that is not the case. And we need to get that message, we need to communicate that. And that's where it kind of links into all of what we've been talking today about the pre-frame, and about making things visible and tangible, and how we can use ChatGPT to help us know where we can and how we can, what words we use, because we know words are important. But we have a message that we need to communicate that is not yet being communicated at large. And we need to pull ahead from that group of average, non-pedagogically concerned piano teachers, because we bring a huge amount of value. We're not expensive, we are just highly valuable, and we have our place.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So Angie has said, you know, this idea of why do you teach? And it is, it's certainly in the September, I think, 2023 box about teaching holistically. And that brings us back to exactly where we need to be. Why do you teach? For me, I teach to help people become better human beings. And in today's world, we need that. We need people who are kind, we need people who are sensitive, and we need people who are engaged in all sorts of different activities. And if I can do that as a teacher, then I think that's a life worth lived. So with that final thoughts, I am just going to say thank you so much for watching, thank you so much for joining us, and thank you to our presenters. Bye-bye.